What I wanted to start with here, as you see on the outline and the handout that you have before you, and I'm sorry for posting it so late. I was grading a bunch of 60 tests at Virginia Tech. They took a lot longer than I thought they were going to. We're going to start talking about language and speech and language and learning language and so forth. And the idea is, I wanted to start off with a little bit of a review here. Skinner versus Chomsky. What was the idea? Skinner versus Chomsky. Hannah, do you remember what the idea was? What did Skinner have to say about language acquisition?
Wasn't it Skinner made the book, and he said that it was language was all from conditioning and stuff, and then Chomsky disagreed and said that's not right.
Yeah, that was the basic idea. Can anybody add to that? So Skinner wrote the book. Go ahead.
He said it was based off reinforcement.
Basically off reinforcement. Good answer, Hannah, and you would continue to do that. And Chomsky read that book and said, no, you can't explain all language acquisition by just talking about, what would that be, Skinner's idea, nature or nurture? Nurture, the environment. You can't predict language behavior off the basis of that. Chomsky said there has to be something innate. Does that pose a problem for behaviorists? Yeah, because behaviorists believe everything is learned. What did Chomsky call his innate situation? Does anybody remember?
Language acquisition.
Yeah, there has to be something, a language acquisition device that allows you to process speech. And so just wanted to give you the background on that. What I wanted to move on to, how many people have actually learned a foreign language? So what I wanted to do next, and we had a lot of hands being raised here, share with me just a little bit on, is that an easy task, Bella? Is that an easy task to do?
No.
What makes that so difficult?
Especially since the language I learned was Arabic. It's a completely different alphabet.
Arabic, a completely different alphabet. I'm going to repeat just for the acoustics here.
It is, they have so many words and it's so different, and sometimes the sentence structure is different, and the way they form the words and the way the words sound, there are sounds that they have that aren't in English.
So they actually have sounds that aren't in English, and Japanese people often report that when they're learning English, it's very hard to do certain sounds as well. How about some other comments? I saw some other hands up. What else? Who else wants to describe their new language experience and how it went for them? Anybody else learned a language? Kate, have you learned another language?
I took 6 years of Spanish. I wouldn't say I've learned the whole language, but it's definitely a challenge.
It's a challenge to learn it in that situation. How have you learned?
Yeah, I learned German. It wasn't that difficult, only because I lived there, but the whole sentence structure is very different.
The sentence structure is different. Living there helps out. Madison, have you learned another language?
Yeah.
What?
Well, I took Spanish in high school, and then I'm trying to teach myself how to speak Swedish.
Okay.
But that's online, so I find it's difficult in each, because in Spanish I feel like I didn't learn much. But the Swedish aspect, it's hard not having an actual instructor.
Yeah, it's difficult not to have an instructor there. And so let's talk about this just a little bit here. When you learn a language, so this will be a note-taking part of the classes, it would be certainly the review, and for the online folks, you guys can review that, and you guys already know that here in the class. But the idea is, when you learn a language in the classroom, hola, ¿cómo estás? What language was that? Spanish. That's how you learn it in the classroom, right? Hola, ¿cómo estás? When you go to the country,
They kick your butt if you talk like that.
they kick your butt if you talk like that, because how do they talk when they're in the country talking about these particular issues? They talk really, really fast. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Da 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 da. Really, really fast. And so one of the issues that they actually do is they co-articulate. They actually don't say each individual. Do you know what those the littlest units of language are, what they're called?
Is that, no, it's not a phoneme.
Bingo.
All right.
A phoneme. A phoneme is that they don't enunciate each phoneme individually. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Hola, ¿cómo estás? Comes out really, really quickly. So they co-articulate. They kind of produce many sounds simultaneously. So that makes it very difficult, isn't it, when you first show up to a country? It makes it very difficult to understand. What else makes that difficult to understand? Besides hola, ¿cómo estás? So when words are produced, they co-articulate. When I'm talking hola, ¿cómo estás? What's also very apparent when I'm saying that? What's also very apparent when I'm saying that? Is there anything else that makes it so simple?
Well, I guess you're really separating the words.
Separating the words. There is clear segmentation of each individual word from another word. So we have segmentation. The question is the world really like that when you're learning the language there? Are these some of the problems that make it very difficult? Talking very fast, yet let's say somebody from another country is in this class right now. How would they be finding my lecture right now? So they'd find it very difficult to perceive this if they're just learning the language. How come are you guys understanding what I'm saying? Except for the gibberish that I occasionally utter out. Oh wait, sorry, that was a little family thing. I do a lot of gibberish around my family to make my ladies giggle a little bit. How does this work for you? How come you're so good at this? What are you able to do? Brittany, what are you able to do?
Like with the segmentation, it's easy to tell which word is related.
Yeah, you can kind of segment, God bless you. Automatically, we have this ability to segment. Would Chomsky kind of be into this idea? Yeah, maybe you have something special. Speech is special. There is something special going on that lets you process language as it occurs. So if you turn your books to page 482, we have a few other issues to talk about here. So if you look on the bottom of 482, when you look at acoustics physically, so we're going to talk about the physical world, if you want to write it for your notes, the physical and the perceptual. In the physical world, sound has time. So one of the variables of sound is it is across time. Hello, how are you today? Hello, how are you today? What else? What's the difference in what I just said there? Physically speaking, what did I vary? Hello. Hello. What would that be called? What did I vary there? Perceptually, it's called pitch, actually. But physically, it's actually called frequency. I vary frequency. And then finally, hello.
Volume.
Hello. So perceptually, maybe volume we would call it, or intensity. Actually, we'll call it volume. Physically, it's kind of called amplitude, if you will. It's called amplitude. So when we look at a speech signal, we can look at it physically, and we can also look at it perceptually. The thing we do that on is something called a spectro, S-P-E-C-T-R-O, a spectrograph. S-P-E-C-T-R-O graph, G-R-A-P-H. A spectrograph. Does it actually say that on 482, it probably does somewhere there, but it's called the spectrograph. So if you look at the spectrograph there, what words are being uttered on the bottom of 482?
What do you mean?
What do you mean? And so you can take somebody's words and kind of look at it. This is actually the physical speech waveform. So these are the physical characteristics across time. And what you can do you notice that do you mean, what issue is this looking at? What do you mean? There's a little break, isn't there, between what and do you mean? What did we call that term between words? What did we call that? You can kind of see it here. It's actually showing here. What is that called, that break? What do you mean? It's actually showing up there because there's nothing between what and do. Does anybody know what that is called again? So you're having segmentation there. Exactly the case. So that is going on. But do you mean? Let's look at that a little bit. It is a little cold in here, isn't it? I don't know. Should we maybe close the window? Do you mean? How does do you mean look in the physical? Yeah, actually. It's blowing in pretty cold. Do you mean? How does that look physically? In the physical world, when we look at the physical world of do you mean, do we see clear segmentation? No, it's actually in the physical world, things are kind of running across each other, and so we're co-articulating, which is what again? What is co-articulation?
Producing many sounds simultaneously.
Many sounds simultaneously. You were just doing a good example of that right there. So you're producing many sounds simultaneously, and there's no break physically in the world. Yet, what are you able to do?
Pick out each individual word.
You seem to have some perceptual skills that allow you to do this. So it turns out that the physical world is kind of different than the perceptual world. And so the other thing I wanted to point your attention to, and I think I draw a little bit on the second page of this handout. I call it the lack of invariance, or speech researchers do. That if you take a look at this situation, a phoneme, a D, it's kind of hard to see there, isn't it? We can look at a D and the frequency, because frequency is physical, and the D is actually in each of these situations. Actually, maybe on the handout, sorry, it was just a slide. The D changes the frequency depending on what? What is after it? Sorry that it was a PowerPoint slide that I found somewhere. But the idea is the D changes on the basis of what comes after it. The frequency of the D is not the same. Because it'd be nice to say, okay, if you say a D, here's the frequency. Then the physical world is this, and then the perceptual world of this. This is called the lack of invariance. There is no one-to-one relationship between the physical world and the perceptual world. So there's what we call a lack of invariance. When you look at the speech signals, when we talk, the frequencies that we talk at are called formants. They're called formants. That's kind of the, if I say a D or a da, that's kind of the base frequency. Your vocal tract is resonating at these base frequencies. Those are called formants. And so we have the problem here of this lack of invariance. There doesn't seem to be a one-to-one relationship between the physical world and the perceptual world. Yet, what are you able to do in this class here? Can you understand what I'm saying? Am I varying my acoustic signal a great deal? Yeah, learning a foreign language is difficult because they're not segmenting things. They're co-articulating everything, and when you first try to learn that foreign language, is it very difficult? Yeah, it's very difficult. Do you get used to it maybe a bit over time? You do. Let me even give you another example. There used to be a hairspray called Alberto VO5 hairspray. I don't know, do they still make? Anybody ever heard that? So, kind of hairspray, and there was an English actress who used to come on and do this commercial. And she used to say the following, and I'll share this with you. Hello, I'm Rula Lenska for Alberto VO5 hairspray. So she used to go, hello. Now what do you know she's saying?
Hello.
Hello. But acoustically, is she really producing that?
No.
What is she actually kind of producing? The letters L and O. So this is kind of the problem, once again, how you're able to take what somebody is saying, and even though they're physically not saying it right, you're able to perceptually understand them. This is the idea of this lack of invariance. You're able to interpret things in that clear and meaningful way. And so this idea of the physical world not matching the perceptual world, this has led to the idea that somehow maybe there's something special about speech. Speech is processed in a specialized way. The other thing to share with you, and I'll just do this as an example. Bella, you did really well on that test.
Yay.
Brittany, nice job. Am I sharing anything else when I'm talking in this way? Lily, that was absolutely miserable. Is it just the words that matter? In all three of those examples, what else was going on? What else was going on there? What was I varying that is actually the tone, kind of the musicality of the voice. And guess what that is called? Prosody. The prosody, the sound of your voice. So if I said something to my wife today, what could I say to my wife? I don't want to say it to anybody in the class here. Well, we could pick on Madison a little bit here. Madison, that watch is just fabulous, dear. What could you pick up from my voice?
Kind of sounds sarcastic.
I sound kind of sarcastic, don't I? Are those cues for you perceptually? So prosody is really a big part of language perception. The prosody that we get from language really matters a great deal in what is going on. And so this idea of language processing, we've got this problem of invariance. The physical world is actually very different than the perceptual world. This has led people like Chomsky to say there must be something special about speech processing. There must be something very special about how we process speech and the signals in speech, because there is no invariance here. What does the word invariance mean? I keep using that word, but what does that word mean? A lack of invariance. If something is invariant. Okay, I got a bottle of water here. Well, let's not do that. I got my masters here. I'm holding up my masters about 5 feet from the table. You know what's going to happen here, don't you? So when I drop this, is that invariant? Do you know what's going to happen when I let go of that object there? Due to what law? It's a simple law. It's the law of what? Gravity. So the simple law of gravity says when I drop the book, it'll hit the table. It'll make a thud sound. So that is invariant, right? But in speech, are things invariant? Are things constant? No, there's no one-to-one relationship, and this is the critical point, between the physical world and the perceptual world. Have I made that point clear for everybody in here? Okay, so we'll close off number 2.